National swimmer Quah Ting Wen ended her Asian Games in Hangzhou in disappointment when her relay team was disqualified in the finals after she jumped 0.1 seconds too early. I'm Tiffany Ang from the CNA Podcast team, and ahead of World Mental Health Day, Ting Wen talks to me about how she's coping with her mistake and the mental health struggles elite athletes like herself face. Thank you so much for coming. Maybe I'll just start with asking, how are you doing now?
I'm trying to be okay. I'm still in the process of processing the games that we just came back from, and I'm actually leaving tomorrow for another competition in Germany, so it's a pretty long flight tomorrow. So I know I will have to process everything, but I think I will put it on hold for a little bit just because my season isn't exactly done. I still have one more week of racing before I can rest properly for a little while. But yeah, I'm trying to be okay. Actually went for training today and I feel okay in the water. So that's good.
I mean, that's the thing also with athletes, right? If you have physical injuries, we can see those physical injuries like a bandaged knee or an arm, but no one can really know the mental anguish that is deep inside. So you had to go through a fresh one just days ago where you had a chance to win a medal, but that was taken away because you jumped 0.1 second too early. That resulted in the disqualification. Let's talk about that, okay? Can you take us through that moment where you realized something was not quite right?
To help people better understand swimming and how little that big mistake was, the allowed time between swimmers when they do relay exchanges is actually negative 0.03. That's the cutoff. So you can go negative 0.03, but anything more, so negative 0.04 and onwards, that's a disqualification. It's counted as you jumping early. So I was very nervous for this race. I actually had another individual event that I swam in the morning, the 50 butterfly that I made the finals for. But I know myself quite well, and I have swum long enough to know my body, and I felt like I was coming down with something. There was a bug actually going around the village. I could hear people on other teams coughing also. And there were some kids on our team who were sick. And I tried to be as healthy as possible, but I could feel myself unwell on day 5 of the 6 days of the competition. It was actually one of my teammates who told me that we might have a medal chance in the relay at night because of another disqualification in the heats that morning by China. And right away I text my coaches and I said, look, I feel like I only have one good swim left in me. And if I do the 50 butterfly as well as the relay, that's 2 swims. And I don't know if I have enough in me to do 2 events. Plus, it is a pretty long finals. We start at 7:30 and the relays would go around 9:30. It's 2 hours of sitting around and waiting, not including having to go there at 5:30 to warm up for my first event. So I told them, I was like, I want to not swim my individual event, so I have everything in me and I only have that in me and I want to give it all to the relay. And my coaches were on board with the plan and so we went ahead with that. So it's kind of like all in, right?
Whatever that's in your tank, right?
Exactly. I could feel my body breaking down. So I told my body, I was like, just need to hold on. Just hold on one more day, one more session. After that, I can rest and I'll make it worth it. So we're behind the blocks. We are already 20 minutes behind schedule. The only time I take caffeine really is for competitions. The caffeine affects me quite a lot. It gives me a lot of energy, but hitting the low when the caffeine starts wearing off takes a toll on me physically, and because of that, then mentally, emotionally, I get a little bit off also when I'm coming off the caffeine. So I was really caffeinated. My whole body was buzzing. We were 20 minutes late for the event, and I was getting really nervous. And we're behind the blocks, and it's loud. The crowd is cheering, even though their favorite team like China is not there. It's still wild, right? It's a relay, and I think everyone knew it was going to be a close one. So I watched the first 2 girls, the Sim sisters, swim backstroke and breaststroke respectively. And
you were the last.
I was the last. I was supposed to go off my sister who was doing butterfly, and I do the freestyle leg, right? So my sister goes, and I'm short-sighted, so I can barely see the board, but I can make out that we are third behind Hong Kong and slightly in front of Korea. Going off the stats, I know that the Korean girl, her freestyle is really, really good. that I would have to try to fend her off and also try and catch up with the Hong Kong girl.
Yeah.
So I see my sister swimming in, and we've done this relay with each other probably over 20 times already.
Mm-hmm.
We've been on the team together for a while, and I feel like it just happened so fast that I had no time to think. The whole time, all I know was that I felt like I wanted it, and I wanted it so badly, not just for myself, but for my teammates. And my teammates in the stands, and my parents in the stands, and all my other coaches back home. I actually knew the moment when I was doing the relay exchange for my sister that I might have made a mistake. I've done this relay so many times that you just kind of know.
It's
right?
muscle memory by this
Yes,
stage, right?
like her body is still too far out from the wall. You know, I'm seeing too much of her body as I'm taking off. And the whole first 50 of the 100, it was just pure adrenaline. Like I could barely feel my body. I could see like the Korean and the Hong Kong go 2 and 3 lanes away respectively, like swimming. And I think because of the early takeoff as well as all the adrenaline, I was going way faster than I usually do for the 100 freestyle for the first 50. And the whole time I was just, in my mind, I was like, did I do something wrong? Did I do something wrong? I might have messed up.
Yeah.
I come off the wall, and because I breathe on the left side, I don't see the girls anymore. And at this point, I stopped thinking about the mistake that I might have made, and I just put everything I have left in me to finish the race. I finished the race, I touched the wall. I don't even look at the scoreboard, I just let the girls' reaction kind of tell me where we're at. My sister is so happy, right? She's squatting next to me, and I am crushed after this race. All my energy spent, I'm just holding on to the blocks and just waiting for the results. And my sister is like, Sarah, we actually, we did it this time. Like, we've actually done it. You can hear the Sim sisters both screaming really loudly, and that makes me happy, right? You don't get the final results right away. You have to wait a little bit. And it was taking longer than usual, and I was just really scared. And when I heard the crowd like start going like, oh, and then the announcer starts talking about how, sorry, they're reshuffling like who podiumed and who didn't, and which team disqualified and what the mistake was, I knew right away that it was my fault. And I think in that moment all I could see was just me, my sister, and my 2 other teammates, and watching their reaction and feeling my reaction. And there was like no one else and nothing else going around me except just this wave of shock, despair, disappointment. The regret came later, the anger came later. It was just, from the morning we were kind of handed this chance. This is a chance for Singapore to get another medal. Sure, it's a bronze, but it's still something.
Of course.
You carry that hope the whole day, trying to rest my body to prepare for it, warming up as perfectly as possible, doing everything perfect all the way until the moment where it actually counted.
Yeah.
And actually hearing the girls be happy and watching their reactions, and then right away having all of it taken away, I think that was the hardest part. So there was a lot of guilt after and regret.
I mean, the thing is, normal people like myself, we make mistakes all the time in our work, in our private life. But that's private, right? I mean, the rest of Singapore, the rest of the world isn't really looking at us. But an athlete at your level, this happens in the public eye. Once it sinks in that, okay, you've made a mistake, right? Can you bounce back from that?
Yes, I think eventually I will come back from this, and I would like to think that this mistake will help me grow stronger and be better moving forward. A part of me is worried that I might look back at this mistake, and while I might have moved on from it, it might not actually help me become a better athlete or a better person. Some people say like things are meant to happen for a reason. Like a part of me is worried that this happened for no reason. Like it just happened. There's no grand scheme or there's no big plan. It's just a mistake, and that's what it is. And that's the part of me that's worried that I can't come out of this better, even though I really, really want to.
And the next day you posted on Instagram, you actually wrote a very beautiful post talking about how you're feeling at that point of time. And I'm just going to read a part that stood out to me. You said, I'm writing this to try to get it out of my head. I'm writing this to try to stop reliving the moment. I'm writing this to express the remorse I feel and the shame I carry and the blame I bear. So a lot of it is like you said, writing to get it out of your head. So why did you choose to talk about it so openly, almost immediately after something so painful?
You know, just like you mentioned earlier on, people go through very private struggles, right? What we were doing at the Asian Games in Hangzhou, not just me, but my teammates and the rest of Team Singapore. Like, we are there representing our country, and in a way, it's a very public thing that we are doing. I feel like in a way it was a way for me to try and make up also to all the media that were waiting for us after the relay. I don't even remember what it was like, but I just remember I was in tears and close to hysterical, and I just ran past the media zone, and I feel like that was a little bit rude to all the journalists waiting and leaving the other three of my teammates to I've not watched any of the interviews. I do not know what my sister and Letitia and Lavinia said. I've not watched any replays of the race or read what people have said online about the race. We were there to represent Singapore. It was a very public thing, and I felt the need to apologize, I think, to people.
That's actually quite a big burden to bear, right? Some people would say you don't have to do that. You don't have to apologize because you are the one who's going through it as well.
Yeah.
You are a professional athlete, and of course you've worked so hard to get to where you are today, but you don't owe anyone anything. But is that sort of a mental pressure or a stressor that you owe something to whether the media or the fans or people who watch the sport to say something after going through something so painful?
It is a very individual sport, swimming, and it is a sport that I chose. So it's my choice, right? So in a way, you can say it's no one else's business. It's just me doing swimming. But at the same time, it's been said before by a lot of other athletes who have come before me and are still around me competing. We are not able to be where we are today without everyone who has supported us along the way. Since I was 8, you know, the people who have taught me, who have guided me through the sport, mentored me, my parents who have been there every step of the way, even though they've no idea sometimes what we are talking about when it comes to swimming. They're better now, but you know, in the beginning, it was really just like making sure we ate right, slept enough,
Because
got to
they're
the pool on
non-swimmers,
time.
so they
were
obviously
not.
don't understand what it takes to get to that level. They're just doing
Yeah.
what parents do, right?
Exactly.
Taking care of their children.
Exactly. And on the sports side, you have the coaches, the support staff, everyone who's been there with us every step of the way, very behind the scenes stuff, right? But they are there. They're working just as hard as us in their own fields to make sure that at the end of the day, we get on the podium and we get the glory. So in a way, I feel like I owe these people to be able to represent them the best I can on that stage, because that brings to light their effort and their work also, and everything that they've done for all of us up to this point. People might say it's okay, like, you know, you can just move on, we're not upset. But the pressure I put on myself, it's not because other people are putting pressure on me.
Yeah.
I put it on myself. I feel like it is this desire to do right by all these people who have supported us this whole time, and also to prove to myself, right, that swimming was the right decision for me.
That's the thing with professional athletes, is that quest to be the best that makes you strive very hard, right? That makes you want to be up there with the Olympians, all the people who are top in their game. But it's a double-edged sword as well, because there's a lot of you telling yourself that there are all these people whose livelihoods, whose expectations, it's all on you. That's what you tell yourself.
Yep.
Having gone through this process before, and we'll talk about that journey a little bit, but having gone through that process, have you been able to identify when exactly do these expectations become unhealthy for you as an athlete or as a person?
I think it starts becoming unhealthy when it starts taking a negative toll on my life and on the lives of the people around me. I think that's when I know, like, it's gone a little bit too far over the line. Yeah.
So you have learned to identify when those moments are?
Yes, I think the first few times when I became a bit more aware of myself, that was when it had gone way too far over the line and I had made some almost irreparable mistakes, things that I couldn't fix, and some things that I wish if I could turn back the clock, I can change. But I've learned to be a lot more aware of myself as an individual. I've learned to be more aware of myself physically as well as emotionally and mentally. I see it as like different levels. I sometimes I realize that I've reached a certain level of maybe being so physically beat down. My body's broken down from training and I'm not getting enough rest, or I'm not eating enough. Then I know what I have to do. I've learned to be more aware emotionally also when sometimes the way I react to something might be a little bit too emotional. Sometimes I realize that I'm starting to be a bit more impatient over something that usually I'm very chill about. And that's kind of when I know that, hey, like something's up. I need to kind of take a step back, figure out what the problem is. If I am able to pinpoint what the issue is there a solution for that issue?
So these are sort of some of the coping tools that you have learned over the years to help you, because setbacks happen all the time. People learn along the ways to cope with disappointments in their lives, right?
Yeah.
How has help been extended to you? How have you maybe learned these strategies? I mean, who taught you and how have you learned?
I saw a sports psychologist for a while, from 2017 to maybe 2020 or 2019. I think those were the years where when I was struggling a lot, and she really helped me to put in place some practices that I have kind of molded over time to suit me better as an individual. At the end of the day, like the psychologists, they don't know you really inside and out, right? It's as much as you share with them, it's as much as you see them, that they can kind of figure you out and try and find ways to help guide you. It started out as sports psychology sessions, but it kind of evolved into really just me talking about my personal life, and I think the way I handle issues. It really helped me to learn to be more aware of myself, and it also taught me to have certain practices. Writing is one. So for example, like the post that I put up on social media the day after the race was not just an apology to people and my teammates, but it was also a way to get all these words and images out of my mind so that I could try and sleep that night. I actually wrote it the night of the race. I just didn't put it up because it was all over the place and very messy, but it really was a way for me to
sleep that night.
Yeah. So writing helps take everything out of my mind, put it on a piece of paper. It's kind of a way for me to try and compartmentalize. Another thing I do is I have a list for myself for when things get very tough. When I'm in a bad place, I'm feeling very low or empty, or I'm going through something really bad. I have a list of things that are very simple, but also things that are controllable, that I can do to first take care of the basic things.
Okay.
Very, very simple things like, have I eaten? Have I gotten enough water that day?
Right.
Have I taken a shower? Am I sleeping enough?
Because these are things you realize you forget when
Yes.
your mind goes to a very dark space.
Yep. And sometimes when I'm in a dark space and it feels like there's no hope, then, I kind of let go of everything else. So this is not just for myself, right? I'm very lucky to have people around me who love me and support me. And in a way that this is also for people around me to kind of know in that moment, instead of,
is she doing this?
yes,
Right?
So if I'm not doing those things, then it's easy for these people to be like, okay, this is how Ting functions and this is what we can help her do first.
So they can do check-ins, regular check-ins, like they can ask you, have you eaten?
Yes.
Have you drunk your water this hour?
Yes, very simple things, but you'll be surprised, like getting just an extra few hours of sleep will make such a big difference to your mental space.
Or just having a nice shower.
Yes,
Right?
and
Yeah.
not feeling so horrible. And I think another thing that I've learned that sometimes some other people might feel that it's a little bit unhealthy is really to allow myself to feel all the feelings.
Yeah.
Give myself a little bit of space and time to feel those things. I've gone both ends of the spectrum before, where I would try and put a cap. I'll try and put a lid on the feelings and shove it aside and not feel those things, really compartmentalize and tell myself, no, it's okay, it's fine, like, no big deal. And I've learned that doesn't work for me, because down the road, something might trigger it and I react way worse than if I had tried to go through all the emotions at that point in time. I've gone to the other end of the spectrum before too, where I'm the main character in my movie. It's all about me. Everything revolves around me, and I'm feeling all these things out, and it's terrible. So everyone around me must suffer also. And it's so bad. Like, why try to make it any better? Let's just make it as bad as it can be. So that's when I get very destructive.
Yeah.
I just get very in my head. And sure, it's bad if it affects me, right? But then it starts affecting the people around me also. And that's when it's things have just really gotten quite bad for me. So I try to find a balance now. I understand that there's a grieving period for me, and I allow myself to feel all these negative feelings, to replay certain images in my mind as time goes on. And I allow myself to do other things and experience other things and other emotions. It helps to layer over the pain, and it helps to layer over all that feelings of regret and the blame that I keep putting on myself, right? You can call it escapism, you can call it distraction. For me, I really think it's more about just continuing to live,
Yeah.
right? Like, in a way, you have to find a way to survive. I can't live in that moment on that Friday forever.
Yeah.
If not, then I'm going to be left behind. I'm going to be alone. At some point, people will move on, and I do not want to be that person who wallows in that moment forever. I was told this by a friend. This is not the only time you're going to experience heartbreak in your life. There'll be other moments where your pets pass away or people close to you leave, and I agree with that, you know. There are different kinds of heartbreak out there, and this is one of many that I will experience, and I just need to have that space to process that and move on, and know that there will be other things that come my way that might not be like what I want, and I will be strong enough to handle those things.
You mentioned earlier on 2017, that was something that you spoke about very openly before you were diagnosed with clinical depression.
Yes.
Do you remember what triggered that? What caused that? And when did you realize that, okay, something is not quite right?
So I graduated from university end of 2014. I decided to try and pursue being a professional athlete, which is something that's very difficult in Singapore. Not impossible, but very difficult. Back then, I think you very rarely heard of anyone who was not doing anything other than their sport. I count myself as one of the lucky ones. You know, you hear stories of how there are other athletes out there who have their whole families just relying on them. They are the sole breadwinner, right? Like, the sport is their job.
Yeah, and it's the entire family's lifeline, so to speak.
Exactly. It's almost like a do or die situation. I feel like that's when sport gets very extreme and it's your paycheck. And I'm lucky that I'm not at that stage. But I think there were things from 2014 to 2017 as I left school behind and swimming became a bigger part of my life. I feel like there was no one really before me who could kind of guide me in that space and kind of prepare me for some of the things that I had to deal with as a professional athlete. So, for example, I felt a little bit left behind. A lot of my teammates or classmates had retired from either swimming. All my secondary school classmates had gone on to pursue careers and climb the corporate ladder and start having different social circles. And I was at that point, 25? And I was still doing the same thing that I had been doing when we were 8, swimming, which to some people, they were like, it's just a hobby, it's just a CCA, just an ECA, it's just something you do for fun. And for me, it was trying to wrap my head around the fact that I was choosing to do this fun thing as my job, as a livelihood. It was hard when my siblings also left in 2017. Both of them left at the same time for university overseas, and I was just feeling very alone, quite lost, and I didn't really know who to talk to about things I was going through in the pool.
Was there a sports psychologist?
Yes, I actually started seeing the sports psych that I was talking about earlier on.
So that
in
was
2017.
where the sports psych then pointed out that you could have a problem.
Yes, it was end of 2017 where she very gently suggested that perhaps I go see someone, not a sports psych, to kind of get diagnosed properly, which I did. And that was when I was started on this night, I forget the name of it now, but I had to take this nightly medication to help with like the chemical imbalances, I guess, in the brain.
So when that was suggested to you, what was your reaction?
There was a lot of shame when I was first told that I would have to be taking this, I had to be relying on this tiny pill every night just to be okay the next day. Everyone goes through a lot of pain and struggle. And it's the same for athletes, but I think sometimes people look at athletes. I used to be that person who would look at athletes and be like, we have to be physically strong and even stronger mentally, right? To be able to do the sport that we do and to push our bodies this way, we have to be tough. There's no space for weakness. There's no space for being reliant on anything. It's all about
pushing through
the pain yourself. Anything less than that, you're not worth the sport. Like, you're not worth being up there with the rest of the greats. And so that was the mindset I had before. And it took me a while to make it actually a habit to take it at night because I was so resistant to taking the medication. But I did. Eventually, I came around to the mindset where I understood that sometimes it's not wrong to get help, even though I might be in a space where the mental fortitude is applauded and expected of athletes. Yeah.
Which brings me to the next question, which is, why do we have this sort of mindset that athletes should have the mental fortitude?
I think because to compete at such a high level, we do have to be very mentally tough. It's part of it, right? You want to play the game, you have to have the right skills for it. You have to push yourself to the next level to be able to race next to the best in the world. I was actually sharing this with my brother the other day when we were in the Games Village in Hangzhou. And we were just looking out at like the Games Village and all the different athletes from different countries walking around. And I was like, sports almost feels like a tiny little world of its own. And it's very simple. The hierarchy is dictated by who is the best in their field and their respective sports. But if you are the best, you are at the top of the food chain. It is just so simple in the Games Village. You just kind of know where you stand by how good you are in your sport.
So nobody has the time to think about mentally where everybody is at, right?
Exactly.
Because everyone's just
trying to be the
looking at
best.
each other based on your bodies and what your bodies can achieve.
Yep.
But nobody is really also measuring it according to the mind and where the mind space is. I mean, in recent times, I think this is something that's been talked about quite a bit. Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, these are people that I think you and I would consider as greats as well, right?
Yes.
And they have come forward and said, okay, today is not the day I'm going to compete. Today, I'm going to prioritize myself. They had a lot of explaining to do after that. And obviously, there was a lot of commentaries and opinions, everybody coming together to talk about that. Is it ever an option for you to say, not today?
I'm not sure because I have never actually brought it up to my coaches before. I think it's because I have never given it to myself as an option. I've never gone into a games or a competition where it was 100% just for me, so I could make 100% of the decision just for myself. Yeah, I think I am in this position where I don't feel like I am unable to pull out because of other people. I think I do not give myself that choice because I really feel like I am representing not just myself, but all the people around me. And there's a part of me that's very proud about that. And maybe if it's an individual event, I'll give myself a little bit more leniency to make that decision for myself. Now, if it was for a relay, no, I don't think I will ever allow myself to see pulling out of the games as an option because I don't know if I would be able to be okay with myself after that. But look, everyone's different. Every individual is different. Everyone goes through things differently. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe there might be one day where I might have to be selfish and really think just about myself. And I will face the consequences after, but make that decision in that moment. But no, so far I think I've been very fortunate where I've not been in that space to the point where I would have to take myself out of a competition.
And I think there will be people who agree where you are standing right now because some people would say, as a professional athlete, you do have the resources at hand to help you process it before a competition, before an event. You just have to handle it. And there will be people who will say, oh, you know, a swimming event is 2 minutes.
Just do it, right?
Just do it, right?
Yeah.
Is it a fair comment when people tell you just handle it? What I'm getting out of this is so far, a lot of it is your personal expectation. Personally, you are telling yourself, I need to get through this, I need to do this. But there are people, even younger athletes who are not like you, perhaps they're being told, just handle it. Is that a fair comment?
It's about finding a balance, right? There's a very fine line between just that tough love where it's like, just do it, you know, suck it up, like just be tougher and be better, just do it. And then you can go all the way to the other side where it's like, no, like think about yourself and take care of yourself and be good and kind to yourself. And I've met people who are from both different groups. And I really feel that it boils down to the individuals, the context, and what you're trying to achieve in the end. Because I have seen athletes who have been told, just suck it up and do it, like be tougher. this is just sport. It's no big deal. And they have been pushed so hard that I've seen people leave the sport very unhappy and with a lot of hate towards the sport just because of the things that they experienced in it. On the other hand, if you are still talking about competitive sports, we were always going to be on the side of, let's take a break today because we're not feeling so good. Let's be kind to ourselves. While that's not wrong, in certain contexts, if you're going to take that stance, then the work still needs to be put in. That's what I'm trying to say. If there are other people doing the work while you are taking like a day off for yourself. That being said, again, it's really about finding a balance, right? I enjoy working. I like the feeling of feeling productive. I am the most confident in myself mentally before a race if I am physically as prepared as I can be, which means pushing my body to the limit every single day and just doing everything I can just so I can stand behind the blocks and be a little bit less nervous because there was nothing else I could do better. I did everything as perfect as I could. However, I also have learned along the way that if I do not once in a while take a step back to take stock of how I am physically, mentally, and emotionally, and just keep pushing myself down, sometimes I might dig a hole of fatigue and exhaustion so deep that if I had taken a day's rest, maybe 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't be here right now so sick and so fatigued that I might have to take 2 or 3 weeks off, and my training, the cycle is broken, the flow is gone. And so it's really learning to take stock of where you are and really just understand yourself as an individual. Tell yourself if you can push harder to just push through the pain, or if you really, really need to take a step back and take some time for yourself.
And I think a lot of younger athletes do look up to you as well. They kind of starting in the scene. Yes, they have trained since they were 8, but now is where they step up to the game, right?
Yeah.
Having gone through what you've gone through and having learned what you have learned over these years in how to cope, how to take care of yourself mentally, what sort of advice would you give younger athletes who are just starting out?
If it's just about the sports, I would say know what your goal is. Have a plan. Don't just have a goal and say you want to be just like so and so, or you want to be at this level. Say that and then make a plan. Have like steps also, right? It's not going to be one straight line to where you're going to get. It's going to be up and down. And I think if you have not just that goal in mind, that's your North Star, you have steps, like a map guiding you to where you want to get eventually, then in those times of hardship, it will be easier to fall back on these steps. Remember what your North Star is and to keep traveling in that direction. That's just purely related to sports. I would also encourage younger athletes to be students, right? Not just be students of your sport, not just understand how your sport works and who the greats are in your sport and who you want to be like, but also be a student of yourself. Like understand what makes you tick, understand how you are like as an individual because everyone is different, and understand how to get the best out of yourself, be passionate about things, and try and find that thing that fuels the fire for you.
And mental health wise, how would you advise them to spot for these red flags?
Again, self-awareness is very important. Also finding a very good support system. It doesn't just have to be a family, right? Finding the right support system within your sport, your teammates, your coaches. I wish I could say that every team had a sports psychologist. I don't know if they do, but it would be great if you had that as a resource also. Having the boldness to sometimes stand up and say like, hey, like I'm not okay, and saying that with integrity and obviously honesty, right? You don't want to just kind of always be using mental health or mental wellness as kind of like a loophole to get away from doing the hard work. At the end of the day, it's the work that you put in. It's like little coins in the piggy bank, right? That at the end of the day, you have what you need and what you want. So really having all those quality support around you, and also knowing what's good for you in terms of taking care of your body, taking care of your mind. It's not just about the mind, right? Like if you're not getting enough sleep or you're not eating the right foods to nourish yourself, then your mind can only do so much for you. You kind of have to be good to your body also. I remember I used to have this coach who would tell me, 2 different coaches actually who used 2 different examples. One of them said, your body is a race car, right? And if you're a race car, what kind of fuel are you going to put in it? You're not even going to go to the regular petrol kiosk, right? Like, you can go to the high-end places.
Yeah, the good stuff.
The other coach was a little bit more spiritual, and she was like, your body is a temple. The things that you want to put at the temple, they are good for you. And basically you want to be good to yourself.
But they say the same thing. Yeah, essentially what they're saying is the same thing. Be good to yourself, put in the good stuff, take out the bad stuff.
To maximize your potential, basically.
Yeah. So now you have a lot of processing to do.
Yes.
But I guess as an athlete at your level, you have to still sometimes compartmentalize your mind and say, okay, I have another event to go to, I have more competitions. Do you think that you have enough strategies to help you to wait until you have a safe space to process it?
I think I do. In the last few days, I've been trying to keep myself busy. Writing has helped a little bit. Talking to different people who have different perspectives have helped a lot. Just seeing the outpour of support and love online from people that I've never met before, but apparently they love to watch swimming and they watch
all
these games.
It's a national sport.
And I am very, very grateful. Words mean a lot to me. To people, it might have taken them like 2 seconds to write, but it really does mean a lot to me and has helped a bit with like the moving on and the healing and the processing of everything. Doing things like I just came from the pool, and while it was hard to get into the water and try and prepare my body for the meet in 5 days, it helped to just kind of go into the water and forget for a minute like all like the medals and the prize money and all the good things that come with success in Singapore, right? And just kind of enjoy the feeling of being in the water and feeling good in the water.
Yeah.
So that helped. This conversation helped also, actually. Like
thank
every
you.
little single thing I do, right? Like I said, it's kind of layering over that pain.
And I want to thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing with me what's going through in your mind right now. I know it's not easy, and I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
For more on how elite athletes cope with their mental health struggles, listen to our special podcast. It's available on the CNA website and app, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. You'll hear from retired mixed martial arts fighter Angela Lee Pucci, as well as Dr. Harry Lim, a senior sports psychologist from the Singapore Sport Institute.